Hey Kath, how you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm not too bad. Let's jump straight in. So why don't you tell people what you went through, what your story was? Just give them a brief synopsis.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with OP after kind of doing some like overstretching. I did a lot of like bar workout classes and was overstretching going into the splits, and I just had this like super intense pain in my hip flexors and like across my pubic bone. And I like kind of waited it out for a couple weeks. I went to the chiropractor. That like seemed to make it worse. And then I went to sports medicine doctor, and they like took some x-rays, and that's when they diagnosed me with OP. And it was such a frustrating appointment because they were like, yeah, we don't really know like why this happens, and there's no treatment. Like the prescription they gave me was like resting, like limited physical activity for a year and a half, then to just like reassess. And I just like left the appointment feeling like devastated and so frustrated because it just felt like, I don't know, like I didn't have any options. Like I wasn't obviously going to rest for a year and a half. Like that's ridiculous. And she had also said, like, usually this like comes up again. Like even if you just be prepared, like even after resting, like it's probably going to be something you deal with forever, basically, was what she said. Um, and so I did a ton of research, like looking into injections. I tried a couple of like doing like muscle relaxers and like some prescription stuff to like manage pain. But I didn't get like any relief really. And then that's when I came across the program. So I watched one of these videos, a lot of these videos. And so yeah, I don't know, do you want me to go into that or just kind of pause?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, I guess what would be really interesting. So obviously, I totally forgot about how it was like bar and it was kind of overstretching that kind of got you there, sort of things. So what would be really interesting is like for people to kind of understand. To me, the biggest thing that people kind of struggle with is this idea of being like, okay, you go to a doctor and there's a paradigm of how you are treated, which is you have a problem, the doctor has an answer, they provide you with an answer, here's a pill, here's a thing. And then you go home, you take this pill, and it's like magic. You start feeling better. You have a cold, you take the antibiotic, you feel better. It's just like bang, bang, bang. And that it's really jarring and almost not traumatic is a strong word to use, but it's almost really jarring where they're just like, oh, like you're gonna have to wait 18 months, or like, not all doctors will say something like, oh, you need 3 months and you need to go do rehab. You're like, it's like, oh, this isn't just like an injury. Like if you had torn your ACL, if you had broken a bone, they would have just gone, putting you in a class, you wait 8 weeks, maybe you do a little bit of physical rehab and you're fine, kind of things, right? It's like walking into this new reality where it's just like, oh, like they don't have the answers here really well. This is really jarring, kind of things. And then I think like the biggest thing that I'm trying to get people this idea of going, hey, this was a long-term injury. This is something that, yeah, the overstretching got you there, but there was probably patterns in there that were kind of led you to like, lots of other people stretch and they don't get OP from it, right? Like there would have been things there. So it's like, oh, we're needing to make these broad changes across your body from your feet to your core kind of things. And that you're going to have to do these over a period of time. You're going to have to learn and control so much of your outcome versus, all I have to do is know how to swallow when I take a pill. Do you know what I mean? All I have to do is sit still when someone puts a cast on my arm. It's like, oh, now all of a sudden I'm driving this ship, right? Kind of things. Like, as you described kind of your process, like if you can describe to people that because you're having to shift that paradigm, I think that's the thing that people struggle with the most, kind of things. But yeah, go for it. Tell them like how when you started, jumping in and you started working on all the stuff. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I think first I was like super excited because I was like, this is so great. This is a program where I can like get better by not resting, which is what I wanted to do because I'm pretty active. I love yoga and walking and bar. Not a runner, but love being active in other ways. So that was what I think was like most inspiring to me at first. And it was difficult to like trust in that because I think it's so, I mean, the messaging is like, if you're hurt, you shouldn't be working out. Like you should be resting and allowing the muscles to repair. So it was definitely a shift for me to think about like, no, like actually developing these new movement patterns are like what's gonna help me. And there's really no way to actually rest your pelvis. Like I'm sure anyone who's OP, like when you sit down, it hurts. Like when you lay down, it hurts. When you walk, it hurts. It's like there's just no way to get the pressure off that body part anyway. So I think that's like something that was really reassuring to me. It's like, okay, it might feel unnatural to be like trying to actively work on healing, but
Yeah.
like when it's part of your body, like you can't put it in a cast, you can't, stop moving or putting pressure on it. So I think that's something that really stood out for me once I like was able to wrap my mind around that. Was like, okay, like I'm not hurting myself by doing this. Like it is going to really benefit me in the long run.
Yeah,
And
if I can on that, that's such a better way to describe it, which is essentially it's like, oh, I have to like what you're describing there is you're going, I have to actively heal. Like I can't passively sit and wait for this to happen, kind of things. Yeah, I think that's a better way of describing it, right? It's like, oh, I have to stimulate healing through engaging better movement patterns, bigger things. Because yeah, I can't actually deload this pelvis. So even if you sat in a bed all day, it'd be great and it would heal to a degree, but you wouldn't actually develop any of the things to not hurt it the second you jump back out of bed. Yeah, that's a really great way to describe it. Sorry, keep going.
yeah. And so I found, as I like worked through the program, I just really enjoyed working with you because I'm a very anxious person. I'm very type A. I like to like I'm very perfectionist. So it was when I'd watch the videos and like try to do the exercises by myself. Well, like the videos were super helpful in like getting, grounded in the movement. Like I couldn't like I don't know how many times you told me like you just have to get out of your head and like trust your body and like just, like trust that you're gonna learn this pattern and it's not like something you're learning in your mind. It's something that you're training your muscles to do, and then like they'll automatically be able to do it eventually. So that was really difficult, but I think also just really reassuring because it's like not something that you're gonna have to actively think about all the time. Which if I started out, I'd be like cooking dinner and like, okay, I need to be mountain pose and like have my core this way and like all these things. And then like I try to like move around doing that and it's like impossible. So it was just really yeah, reassuring to work with you and like have you tell me like, no, like your body's learning this. Kind of like you learn a new language and then you don't have to think about it at the end. Like that's like the end goal is being able to get back into what you love doing and not have to worry that, your form and ways of moving are going to be having like a negative impact in bringing OP back.
So if I just summarize that there, right? Like, so I have a very similar personality, right? Like just very anxious, very like, yeah, type A like that. And for me, like the reason why I made videos was because I would like, I had a bad back. So I would go see, therapists and I ended up doing this job to fix my back, right? So I would see therapists and I would like, it was so frustrating because I'd be like, what you're saying makes so much sense. And I'm so angry at myself that I can't remember what you're saying by the time I get home. And then I'd be like, oh, I know I'm doing this wrong. Just know I'm doing this wrong. And I'm doing it. It's like, and I was just like, I'm failing. It's like, not the therapist's fault. I'm failing to do what the therapist is telling me to do kind of things. And therefore I'm not getting better because I'm just failing. I'm sucking at this kind of things. I'm sucking at getting better. And so like, I made videos to just be like, oh, cool. Like, well, I really wanted something to like go off right. And then, yeah, it was weird because like I started my career being like, oh, well, if you just do everything perfect, your body will just respond, right? And then you start to like, you work along and you're like, oh, well, God, the human body is so complex, right? So it's like, even if you are type A, and even if you have to get out of your head, it's like you need at least I needed the information to watch in a video to be like, no, it's okay. You're doing it right. You're fine. It's okay. Now you can chill. Do you know what I mean? Like, because otherwise these doubts were like, was I supposed to put my foot here or here? Was I supposed to activate this one? I'd be like, okay, no, it's fine. I'm getting it right. I'm not remembering this wrong. Now I need to like chill and like let it happen kind of things. But it makes total sense, right? Like, because you're normally supposed to move. You're not supposed to know any of this crap. You're just supposed to move and you're supposed to work, right? And so like that trust gets broken when you have pain all the time because it's like your brain's just like, well, no, I can't trust you to just move because it hurts. So therefore I'm thinking me is going to take over and do all this stuff perfectly. And yeah, the hardest thing to explain to anyone who's watching this is kind of the idea that sometimes you can do something right, but still be doing it wrong. And there's no way for you to fix it in that moment. So it's like you're doing all the right things, but you literally don't have the neural architecture. The nerves can't get the muscle to fire at the right time. The fascia isn't strong enough to stabilize the leg, but I can look at someone doing the exercise and go, hey, if you just keep doing it like this, even though you're technically doing it wrong, the repetition will get it better. Versus sometimes someone can send me something and it can look fine, and I'll be like, hey, like, what are you activating? How are you doing that? I'm like, no, you look fine, you look the part, but that if you keep doing it like that, you're going to be sore. If we increase the weight, if we increase the difficulty, you're going to be sore because you're not connecting to it. It's not things. And like that also is a departure, because again, it's like, oh, you give me 5 times 8 reps, and I'll be like, I'm not telling you how many reps or sets. You need to feel this, and then you can move on. It's like, oh, that's such a departure to how you normally work out. It's like normally just do this amount and it'll work, like magic kind of things, as opposed to, oh, you have to like connect to your body and feel it. Yeah, that's a really hard one. But yeah, I'm right there with you on that. It's just like, I would always be thinking, I just not remember, I'm doing it wrong. And yeah, it's weird because you don't want to overthink it, but like if you ignore that anxiety, it just gets worse. Like you just get more intense with it. Sorry, keep going with what you're saying. But yeah, I totally relate to that.
Yeah, yeah, I think just having the videos was really helpful, because I could like look back and kind of like you said, like if you're feeling unsure or can't remember, like even sometimes my notes that I would take during session when it like totally makes sense. So it's like good to refer back to them, but also just super helpful to have like the one-on-one interactions and just like building that trust with, I know for me, like I really struggled after experiencing this to like trust doctors. I still do, just because I felt like they really kind of like just gave up on me. And so it was like, I don't know, really, really refreshing to find someone that I felt like I could trust with um my healing like and body. Just someone that like I knew had like really researched the topic and was really invested in like, you know, hearing like your own personal story with like your journey through your own back pain and that kind of stuff. I think it was just like made it feel like I know, you know, like that you really want the best for me, and that like this program is like not just like big pharma or like health insurance trying to kind of like sweep things under the rug and just like fix the symptoms, but it was just like really felt like a very holistic and like trustworthy approach, if that makes sense. So
I mean, just watch that Netflix show about OxyContin, that painkiller show. I appreciate that because that thing was insane. So yeah, I appreciate that. It's hard for me to imagine that as an Australian, that things like that happening. But yeah, I appreciate that because yeah, that's the exact opposite of what I'm going for on that. Okay, so what would you find like what did you find was like the hardest point to you when you were trying to get better, and what was the bit where you really got just stuck or you found things really difficult?
yeah, I think for me, like I really struggled with my glutes, like just being able to access that muscle at all or like feel that muscle at all. So like as we moved through the first like couple of stages, I felt like things were going well and I was like really understanding. And then I just got really stuck. Like I remember you gave me a lot of extra homework with like different exercises just to like get my glutes to fire. And for me to like feel that happening. And so I just remember being like, "Ah, like this, like there must be something wrong, like structurally with me. Like there's just no, like I can't get this." And it was just like, felt like kind of this wall of like, okay, you know, like I'm kind of giving this my all, like just working for like hours on this one exercise every night. But you know, like obviously since I'm here talking to you, I did eventually get through that, but it's just hard. I think, you know, whatever body part it is, you know, it's like, it's just so frustrating. You just wish you could talk to your muscles and be like, why won't you do this? Like I'm telling you to.
It's funny,
um,
right? Because I don't really get to see that because I don't get to see like what you're doing. Right? I only get to see like, you know, the video. So people will send me, anyone watching this, people will send me videos during the week just to make sure things are on track. So like I'm seeing the videos, right? And you're always really good at just being religiously getting your videos in, which makes my life significantly easier. But yeah, I don't get to see like the hours that you might put into kind of getting one stupid muscle to just do its goddamn job when it just shouldn't actually do it, right? While from my perspective, it's just like, oh, this makes sense. You're like, look at the things you naturally like to do, yoga, ballet. Those are things that generally revolve around flexibility. Like people who are flexible generally gravitate to those things because they're a little bit better at it, right? And if you're really flexible, it can be harder to engage your glutes because the hip just doesn't want to sit in the socket as much. It kind of like this is a gross overgeneralization, but kind of bounces around too much kind of things. If you're a bit stiffer, it's annoying because you're less flexible, but actually like if you squat down, your bum gets stretched harder, it gets more toned straight away. So it's going to fire more easily in a toned state. So it's like from my perspective, I'm just like, oh yeah, it's cool. You just need this extra stuff. It's fine. Like for me, I'm like, I've seen this a million times before. You're just a bit flexible. You're a bit hypermobile. This is normal. And it's just like, oh, but you're really good at this core stuff and you're really good at this other stuff. And like, you know, these balance exercises you're really good at because of the ballet. So it's just like, yeah, it evens itself out kind of things. But it's so hard because I don't really get to see the emotional distress of just like, oh, this stupid muscle will not fire. And if this muscle doesn't fire, am I going to get better? And like, I don't get to ever see that. And then I get to do this and I'm just like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. That would be really like frustrating thing was to me. It's just like, oh, you're doing great and you're getting your videos in and you're just so focused and dedicated. You're just like, of course you're going to get better. Like it's just inevitable. Like to me, like, and that's how I feel about everyone. It's just like, oh, hey, if you have the right thought patterns, right attitudes, you're approaching this the right way, there might be some U-turns, there might be some issues. Your body might have its own peculiarities that make things difficult, but it's like, oh, you're going to figure it out because you're doing all the right things. And it's just, it might just take a few little adaptations. But yeah, it's so stressful when, because you just don't have any control over it, really. Like I always try to explain, it's like when your body's working well, you're not driving the car, you're like the CEO of a company. Like you don't really know what they're doing down there. You know, you grab a water bottle, it's like you think you're doing this, but do you know which finger you're pushing harder than the other one? You don't. It's just happening, right? It's like you're like, yeah, if you're managing a company, you think you're controlling it, but you have no idea what your worker's doing down there. So if something's going wrong, you might have no idea why it's going wrong. And it's so frustrating because you don't know what level, if you're the CEO, is it the management? Is it the people? Is it the suppliers? Like, where is the problem happening? Yeah, it could be so frustrating in that moment because you just can't get the answers to it, sort of things. Yeah, that makes total sense. Okay, then wrapping this all up, if you were to just say to anyone, and not specifically about this program, but just anyone who's dealing with OP right now, or even just any of the pelvic conditions related to OP, and they're just struggling with their body and they're kind of feeling hopeless, what would you kind of say to them to just try to be like, you know, so that they can kind of get to where they need to be in terms of their health and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I think, you know, like this program is super great for developing those positive movement patterns and also for building like kind of like you just mentioned, like those mental, like thinking patterns that are really important for healing. Like I think both those played like a huge role in my healing because even as I was progressing through the program, I was still experiencing a lot of pain. Um, and for me, like it was so helpful to have like those videos talking about like the different ways of looking at pain and like how people with chronic pain, like a lot of it can be like a mental block almost. And that's not to say that your pain's not real or that it's all in your head. Like it's a very different mindset than that. But it is really like empowering once you realize like, okay, like I can choose to be in pain and like be afraid to do anything or like to move or like to do, you know, to like try anything new or like just kind of sitting in your chair. Or like I can choose to like be in pain and moving, but like knowing that I'm improving like my movement patterns and that like through that eventually I'll be able to get out of pain. And like even if you have flare-ups or like pain in the future, like I've had, you know, obviously I'm like human, so I've had other injuries since. That has been like huge for me just in like tackling any injury, like moving forward, just kind of that mindset shift.
And yeah, let me just elaborate on that just in case anyone's misinterpreting. So when she says like, yeah, like, you know, pain can be mental, what the information you really want to take away from that is the idea that sensitivity and physical dysfunction are two separate things. And when you've had chronic pain, your sensitivity is going to get dialed up. You've had an injury, it's been going on for a while. Your brain's like, why hasn't this healed yet? Oh, I'm going to dial up this sensitivity so I can get more information about the problem, which is your pain area, to try to solve the problem, right? The problem is that that's not working. It's just making your pain worse, which is making you brace more and tighten more and get more anxious, which is amplifying your pain. You're just in this horrible, horrible loop. And basically it gets to the point with a chronic injury, and you can read into this, The Way Out, there's a bunch of research, neuroplastic pain, you look up all these things, but basically you get to this point where you can almost not trust the things that your pain is telling you, that sometimes you could be doing things totally fine, not putting any physical force or damage on your problem area, yet be experiencing pain as if you are. And then at this point, your experience is not matching the physical reality of what you're doing to your pelvis. And so now, like, you know what I mean? It's like you're stumbling around in the dark with your body and you're just constantly living in fear. And the thing that I want people like this, the most basic thing is kind of going, I would like to set you up with a system of being able to tell whether or not you are damaging your pelvis. So, hey, if your foot activates at this moment, you feel your glutes and you feel your core. Yes. Are you doing everything 100% perfect? Probably not. There's probably some little areas, but you're probably doing it 85%, 95% right. And if you need to get your kids to school, or you got to go to work, or you got to do those things, you can kind of go, hey, this pain I'm experiencing right now for my life, my happiness, for my ability to do the things I need to do in my life, it is not as important as getting my kids to school right now, or being a good partner, or whatever it is that you want to do with your life in that moment. So you can be like, hey, I'm feeling my foot, I'm feeling my glute, I'm feeling my core, whatever the movement is, it'll be different things. So I can be pretty safe that I can do this thing, not physically damage my pelvis anymore, and get on with my life, kind of things, to a degree. And what happens is the more and more you can do that, the more you can replace your decision and judgments on what you're physically doing with your body and your patterns, as opposed to the pain you're experiencing, the more that sensitivity actually dials down, because then you do it and you don't blow up and you don't die and things don't completely collapse, and your brain kind of goes, in a very simplistic explanation, just goes, I was making this prediction that if I did this thing, I was going to bang. So I gave you a lot of pain to tell you to not do this thing. You did the thing anyway, and it turned out okay. Maybe I was wrong about that. And it can actually just dial down the sensitivity a little bit in those situations. So what Kath's really talking about there is this idea of going, okay, I'm in a lot of pain right now. I could sit in a chair and do nothing, or I could do this little tiny exercise. And, you know, if I feel this and I feel this and I kind of feel okay and I feel safe, maybe I can try it a little bit more. You can just dig yourself out of a hole very slowly, sort of things. And that what's really important in that process is that you can't just bully. Willpower is an amazing thing. But if you just go, well, I'm doing this anyway, I don't care. It's great. You'll do the thing, but somewhere in the back of your brain is going to go, this is a bad idea, this is a bad idea, this is a bad idea. You will tighten, you'll hesitate, you'll brace, you'll do all these other things, and you'll actually dial up your sensitivity more, because you're not listening to yourself. But if you can kind of have a conversation, you make a compromise, it's almost like your brain. So if you do have that conversation, you're like, I need to get to work. I need to do my job to pay my bills so my kid can have food. Yes, I'm in pain, but I can feel my glutes. I can feel my core. Your brain is not unreasonable. It will do, your subconscious is not unreasonable. It will do things like going, okay, I'm kind of safe. I can get through this. I can get through this. If you're just like, I'm doing it anyway, I don't give a shit what you think, subconscious brain, it is just going to be like, you're not listening to me. If you do this, you're going to be in trouble. I need to amp up your pain even more and kind of do this. And that, yeah, there's a fine line between, hey, yes, technically it can be a mental thing, but that doesn't mean it's not a physiological thing. So these are real pain receptors sending real signals to your brain, and that you can actually help. If you're respectful of what your body's experiencing and you work through it, you can actually train your brain out of these processes. If you're one, not doing anything to make it worse, so you're physically moving correctly, and that you're two, you're patient and you're willing to not just bully your body into things that it's not ready to do, as much as you might want to go for a run or do something like that sort of things. Would that describe what you're kind of getting at, kind of things? Yeah. Because yeah, like you were kind of describing, like kind of alluding to there, sometimes people hear that, it's like it's in their head, it's like, oh, it's in my head, it's my fault, which is like, no, those are two very different things. Yes, it is mediated by your brain, it is not your fault, kind of thing.
Yeah, very real, and like take away from the physical sensations you're feeling. It's just, yeah, like you said, kind of having that knowledge to know like what's going on in your body and why you're experiencing the pain, even if you're moving correctly, just for me was like very helpful in allowing me to complete the program, and to really like trust in that, like, you know, like even if I'm doing everything right, I might still be feeling this pain, but that doesn't mean that like it's because, you know, like I'm not getting better. It's just because my brain has learned to expect this and those neurons for those movements.
And then the last part of that, it's like, if you've ever had if you've ever known someone or had someone who's like, had a partner cheat on them, right? It's like, you can't help but be suspicious, right? Like, I don't think someone very close to you betrayed you. So even if you have the greatest partner in the world, the next time around, it's like, oh, your body's on the lookout. Just like, your brain's on the lookout, your heart is on the lookout. It just can't help it. It's almost literally the same thing with your body. Like once you've had this and it's been going on, it's like, oh, you do an exercise and you get a little bit sore in the right areas, and your brain's likely to overreact to that as well. So it's like it's just on the lookout kind of thing. It sucks. But no, thank you so much. This has been so really good. Anyone watching this, I hope you can take a lot away. But yeah, thank you so much for doing this, Kath.
Of course. Happy to.